Debbie, you made a comment what you do on your downtime, which is to try to appear, and that's a form of professional development, right? Mm-hmm. So one form of professional development is to learn technology, right? The other form is to learn the business, right? Right. And so it's pretty clear that you often come into the situation where they don't know the business, but that's part of the VP of engineering interim job, right? So you're not surprised at that. But what I was surprised is that Mark's throwaway comment implied you're dealing with teams that are sometimes technically weak, but they think they're strong, they're delusional.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay?
Look, I mean,
okay.
Yeah, I'll give you two quick examples, all right? So one example is teams look, I'm a technical guy, so every once in a while I excuse myself and I said, I'm sorry, I'm putting my technical hat on. Why can't you do this? So today, okay? This is today. Somebody says, they're trying to install something in this customer's environment. They've built this kind of fairly complex application. And of course, the developers are Java developers, okay, or C++ developers. They have no clue about IT. And so they try to put things together in such a way where they can put it into an environment. And they said, well, we just don't know whether we have any hard-coded IP addresses in our installation scripts and configuration files. I go, okay, I know what grep is. Can you guys run grep or awk or something? And, I can write the script for you if you need me to. I said, I don't want to find it out symptomatically, right? I don't want you to run this darn thing and find out something didn't work. Go do it proactively, right? And look, I'll just do one more real quick. It's like, okay, programming 101. Don't trust your parameters. If you're in a routine, you better darn well check to see the stuff that's coming in matches your expectations. Because what happens is you have crap that comes in and symptomatically you find it out as opposed to your program finding it out. So I said, look, the goal is for your program to find all the problems that it might run into by external forces. I mean, so you say, like, okay, why can't these people figure this out? It's because they have not been trained. No, there is no mentor because companies are moving so quickly and hiring so quickly, they don't take the time to go ahead and train these folks, especially when you're talking about a global organization, which a lot of bigger companies are doing.
Yeah. All right, I think we have time for one more question, depending on how long the answer goes, one or two. You're the lucky guy.
Oh my goodness, this is a lot of pressure. I think I have a somewhat pragmatic question that I'm afraid is a little self-serving, but I suspect it might serve some of the other people here, but I'll just ask it instead of talking about it. So I've been a VP a couple of times, and this morning I signed a contract to do a 1-week assessment of a company. And I have some ideas of how to do this, and I'm kind of in the process of setting it up. But I'm curious what advice you have for doing a good assessment of an engineering organization.
Who wants to start? You want me to start? Okay. Yeah, I've probably done a lot of them. So you're assessing the engineering organization, probably, and the product and the processes, right?
Ostensibly it was engineering, but that it's about more than that.
Right. So typically what I do if I have a whole week, that's a generous amount of time in a way. I kind of a lot of what you do if you're parachuted in as the VP of engineering, right? What's your first week on the job? You're probably going to meet one-on-one with all the engineers, or at least the key stakeholder engineers. You might also meet one-on-one with the key functional partners, like you probably want to talk to the head of product. What has been his or her experience with engineering, right? They're late or there's bad quality, right? You might also want to talk to the head of support or, ops if that's separate. So what are the key peer stakeholders, and then meet with the engineering team, typically one-on-one, and find out a little bit what's going well, but really, what are the issues? What do you think, are the problems? And then I try to sit in on some of the key meetings and observe those dynamics. So the stand-up meetings, the sprint planning, right? I mean, how are those going? What's the communication like? And then I also, you obviously get, get a sense of the tools being used and how those are being used. Are we doing Git with pull requests? Are we, how do we, are we using Jira? Are we using Rally? And see how that's all laid out. And depending, how comfortable you feel with the particular technology, you might also do a little bit of looking at the source code. I mean, I think honestly, what I always find is even if the software is screwed up, why is it screwed up? Well, it's because of the people and the process, right? And I also, it'd be interesting, I typically pull resumes or looked at LinkedIn's of the people to see what's the DNA that I'm dealing with, right? Like, am I dealing with all junior people? Do I have a lot of Java expertise, but I'm more of a web Python shop, right? Like what's the makeup of people for the job that needs to be done as part of the assessment?
Yeah, I think you hit most of the stuff. I would just, extend the sort of the end-to-end thing of, product support, all the components, because usually it's the interaction with the other parts of the company, sales, so on and so forth, sales engineers, that forces them to bring you in. It's not usually an introspective thing. And then, I think to maybe, sort of codify what Debbie said is to just say, look, there's good hygiene in the year 2017. I don't care if you're a Python shop or a C shop or, whatever, there's good hygiene, right? There's standard processes, PRDs, and architecture, and code designs, and code reviews, and test development. That's agile processes along with those things. I mean, guys, remember, agile's got 17 processes. So, people tend to only think about it as scheduling. It's not. Right, and so there's certain things that are just well defined in the year 2017, and you ought to make the list of those and just check off and see what they're doing for those things. And then I've done, instead of code inspection, I've actually gone through the bug list, and that's really been enlightening. And obviously you got to look at what problems they claim to be having. Right, and it could be anything from relationships to communication to processes to people. It could be any of those things. And so I have a checklist. I bet you have a checklist. After a while, you develop your checklist, and you just go down and go, okay, so you don't forget anything. I mean, that's why I wrote the darn book. It's because I needed a checklist, and I kept on forgetting stuff. And so as you get older, you have rituals, and rituals are checklists. So that's really what I would suggest very strongly to do. I think the other thing is you have to be careful about who your audience is and who's paying your salary, because sometimes you want to have two reports. One report that's publicly consumable and one that's not, right? And just think about that, because sometimes things are sensitive, and so the public report's very constructive, and the private report is pretty direct.
Insightful. So I'm going to go back to bring your red flag detector. And what each of us has a sense of what great software development organizations look like, and you're constantly asking questions to ferret out, is that what I'm looking at here? And keep asking questions. It's like, oh my, your jaw begins dropping, and you have to think about, what question can I follow up with that's going to bring me some understanding of why my jaw just fell. So it's just over and over and over again.
I think if you want to ask your question, Tom, and get a quick answer, we have a few more minutes, 1 minute each person.
Just a quick one. Is there a typical problem you see over and over again that is almost like this again,
Let's go in the reverse order.
They are kind of unique for organizations.
So I've thought about this a little, and I think every single organization's problem is unique, and they fall into categories. So categories of discipline, of communication, of collaboration,
Personality disorders?
personality disorders. Yeah, so there's like 5 or 6, I think, categories that I have to think about it to come up with what they are. But I think for me they fall into categories, and everyone's unique.
The only thing I comment is that often the solutions aren't unique, right? If you, again, do the things that we see good organizations do, it tends to solve these problems, but they manifest in different ways, right?
Yeah, the only thing I'll add is a lot of times I see a lack of leadership on the engineering side. You know, there aren't a lot of great VPs of engineering out there. I'm sure all of you who are, but I've seen a lot of bad ones, right? I'm always replacing somebody typically, right? So a lot of it is modeling and expecting the right things out of your team, and they rise to the challenge, right? If you expect quality, you expect good communication, you show that, you model it, they're going to follow that. So a lot of the problems I see are the leadership and the accountability and the expectation setting.
Yeah, and I'll just tell you that the data on this is really clear why teams fail globally. Number 1, they fail to build trusting relationships. We heard about that tonight. Number 2, they can't overcome communication barriers. And if you look down at the data, it's not about language, it's about problem solving and decision making. Number 3 is the individual goals and the team goals are not aligned. We heard about clarity. And number 4 is they don't have clear goals. And whose job is it to make sure there's trusting relationship, good communication, clear goals, and aligned priorities? Leader. It's a failure of leadership. So I think what we really would love to have is another night to just talk about the difference between leadership and management and how leadership is what's sorely lacking. I just want to thank the panel. Please thank the panel for their contributions.